There's a new tension building in London's political circles. And it isn't about elections, budgets, or cabinet reshuffles. Instead, it's centered on something a lot quieter and far more difficult to detect. The fear that China is expanding its espionage footprint inside the UK using the kind of methods that blend easily into normal political life. The situation escalated after MI5 issued an alert to MPs, peers, and parliamentary staff, warning them that Chinese intelligence operatives were using professional networking sites, specifically LinkedIn, to approach and cultivate individuals who might have access to political insights or sensitive parliamentary information. What makes this episode particularly serious is the allegation that these operatives posed as headhunters offering career opportunities, a tactic meant to look harmless but designed to create long-term channels for intelligence collection. As this unfolded, another politically contentious issue resurfaced: Beijing's request to build a new embassy complex in central London, moving the conversation onto a larger question about how the UK manages the balance between openness and national security. The MI5 alert identified two LinkedIn profiles, operating under the names Amanda Q and Shirly Shen, which it said were being used on behalf of China's Ministry of State Security. The security agencies described these accounts as part of a large-scale outreach campaign targeting people inside or adjacent to British politics, including parliamentary aides, think tank researchers, consultants, and even members of the House of Lords. One example emerged when Simon Wellband, who works for Conservative MP Neil O'Brien, found an old message from one of the flagged accounts offering what looked like a job opportunity, albeit written in awkward English. He described the incident as unsettling but not surprising, noting that those who are new to political work might not recognize these approaches as suspicious. MI5's assessment suggests that the tactic is designed to blend into the kind of career networking that has become common in political and policy professions, making these approaches harder to detect, especially for younger or less experienced targets. The alert circulated by Commons Speaker Sir Lindsay Hoyle and his counterpart in the House of Lords emphasized that Chinese intelligence actors were actively trying to build relationships over long periods of time, using both online networking and offline incentives. Among the techniques highlighted were invitations for fully funded trips to China, offers to share research funding, and payments for general insights that might appear low-level but could help build a broader picture of parliamentary activity. MI5 outlined that China often works with a low threshold for what qualifies as useful information, accumulating seemingly mundane details to strengthen its political intelligence assessments. This isn't new behavior. Just 2 years ago, the UK issued an interference alert about Christine Lee, who was believed to have cultivated extensive political connections in Westminster. And more recently, a separate espionage case involving 2 men accused of spying for China collapsed after prosecutors said they couldn't obtain certain classified evidence relating to the government's assessment of Chinese threats. The collapse led to further concerns about the scale and sophistication of Chinese intelligence activities operating inside the UK. The Chinese embassy in London immediately denied the allegations, describing them as invented and defamatory, and accused the UK of staging political theatre to justify a confrontational posture against Beijing. Chinese officials said they had lodged strong diplomatic objections and called on the British government to stop what they viewed as harmful behaviour that damages bilateral relations. This defence follows a familiar pattern. Beijing has repeatedly pushed back against claims of espionage, cyber activity, or political interference, whether from the UK, the US, Australia, or several European states. But the accusations continue to build, not only in intelligence reports, but also in the warnings coming from senior UK security officials. MI5 Director General Ken McCallum has spent the past 2 years repeatedly stating that China represents a daily national security challenge due to its attempts to access British data, research, and political processes. Against this backdrop, the embassy dispute in London becomes even more sensitive. Beijing wants to build a vast new complex on the site of the old Royal Mint, a location within close proximity to several government buildings, a proposal that has faced opposition from some MPs who worry that the site could pose surveillance risks. Security Minister Dan Jarvis responded to the MI5 alert in Parliament by announcing a series of measures aimed at strengthening Britain's resilience to foreign interference. These included £170 million to upgrade encrypted government communications, new protections against cyber intrusions linked to Chinese actors, and tightened rules to limit covert funding of political parties. He also confirmed that political candidates and party officials in the devolved and local elections scheduled for next May would receive dedicated security briefings. Jarvis emphasized that although China is still the UK's third largest trading partner, economic ties cannot exempt Beijing from scrutiny. He said the government would be prepared to use sanctions when necessary and would strengthen national security legislation to address the emerging risks. One of the big political questions he tackled was whether China should be moved to the enhanced tier of the Foreign Influence Registration Scheme, a status currently reserved for Russia and Iran, requiring mandatory registration of all political influence activities. The government, he said, was considering the option but had not yet made a decision. The opposition, as well as several members of the governing Conservative Party, argued that the government must adopt a much firmer stance. Alicia Kearns, a Conservative shadow minister specializing in national security, urged ministers to place China into the enhanced registration tier immediately, saying transparency is essential given the scale of Chinese operations. She also called for cancelling planned ministerial visits to China and rejecting the embassy construction request. Meanwhile, former party leader Sir Ian Duncan-Smith argued that the latest MI5 alert proves that China's behavior is openly hostile and that the government has been too hesitant in naming China as a strategic threat. He pointed to a long record of incidents, from cyber attacks and intellectual property theft to attempted recruitment inside Parliament, arguing that the public already recognizes the threat clearly, even if the government seems reluctant to characterize it as such. These comments reflect a broader shift in British politics over the past 5 years, where skepticism toward Beijing has grown across multiple parties, fueled by incidents ranging from the Hong Kong crackdown to concerns about Chinese ownership in critical infrastructure. The warnings issued by MI5 also draw attention to a wider challenge: the ease with which intelligence operatives can exploit professional networking platforms to contact political staff and researchers. LinkedIn in particular has become a major battleground for this kind of activity, not only in the UK but across Europe, the US, and Australia. Intelligence agencies estimate that thousands of fake profiles tied to foreign governments operate on the platform, often using generic business identities or recruitment covers. The goal is rarely an immediate transfer of classified information. Instead, the focus is on slow building relationships, grooming potential sources through flattery, small rewards, and incremental requests. In many cases, the targets don't even realize they've entered an intelligence relationship until much later. British intelligence officials argue that this is one of the reasons China has been so successful in gathering large quantities of political and economic information across Western systems, especially data about policy debates, government priorities, and legislative planning. All of this plays out as the UK struggles to navigate a complicated relationship with China, one shaped by economic interdependence, political disagreement, and escalating security concerns. The fallout from the collapsed espionage case earlier this year has already sparked questions about whether the UK has the legal tools necessary to prosecute state-linked operatives. Meanwhile, the embassy dispute remains unresolved, with the final decision resting with the Housing Secretary. The broader issue, however, goes beyond any single case or alert. It reflects a systemic challenge facing democracies worldwide. Open societies depend on transparency, networking, and political engagement. precisely the environments that foreign intelligence services can exploit. The MI5 warning makes clear that Beijing sees value in cultivating long-term access points into British political life, whether through online approaches, funded trips, or data collection. And while the UK government insists it will take every necessary step to protect national interests, the debate now centers on how far Britain is willing to go to confront China without destabilizing one of its most significant global relationships.